All right, here we are. This is kind of the midsection of the ride. Just take a quick little look. Just a beautiful little spot. I think this is Cook's Road that we just came down, and we're just heading down the trail down this way. That's going to head eventually up to Flat Rocks Road, but basically we're going to need to go up and down a few valleys, and can get a bit rocky and snotty, I think, before we get to the farm that runs adjacent to Flat Rocks Road. But I thought I'd take the opportunity to have a look and do a bit of a review of the 690. I've had it for 3 years now, so good opportunity to go over some of the mods, some of the changes I've made after some mods that I did, and yeah, look at what basically has worked and the problems I've had with the bike, and overall what I think. So let's do a quick little review now. Alright, so here's my 690. From my original review, I've added a sticker kit. I also had the Lynx fairing tower that was on the front. I ended up swapping that back to the stock fairing and adding this, I think it's a Puge screen, just to give me a bit of wind protection, and more importantly to give protection for the phone against rocks and things like that when on the road, and also wind blast and bugs. I went back to the stock fairing because basically I wanted to take some weight out to keep the bike light for this sort of trail use. I originally had this bike set up as my light adventure bike, and it served well for about 1.5 years, 2 years of doing it that way, but you know, there's no substitute for a bit of bulk on the road, and I do a lot of road Ks, and the bike was just quite fatiguing on, you know, on multi-day rides where you're doing a lot of highway, you know, 1,000 to 3,000 kilometres I've done trips with this thing, and just in those sorts of environments on a big day, it's just hard work. So I've gone back to another road bike. I had a 1090, which was kind of a bit too big for the dirt riding that I like to do. Very capable, amazing suspension for a big bike, but the 890 really is I won't call it a unicorn, but it's a Goldilocks bike. It's sort of, you know, not too big, not too small. It'll get through the stuff we did today if you need to, but on these sorts of trails, it's just brilliant. All right, let's see. What did we keep? What did we change? What have we done? So apart from the sticker kit, changed out the screen and went back to the stock tower and just mounted my phone off the bars. I had this bracket which just fits to the clamps. I've used that previously on other bikes, so I've just used that in this occasion. Otherwise, you know, just the stock mounting for the quad lock would be fine. The cruise control here, which I added for road riding for long trips, is really good. It's what makes this bike a good road bike for a lightweight bike, because you just hit the cruise and it takes all the fatigue. You know, it's a big single. It can get a little vibey at high speed for, you know, constant throttle. Certainly no issue just for normal street riding or for riding on the trails. But you know, those long rides definitely can be quite numbing on the hand. And you could always use the grip puppies, which just slip over and give you a bit of vibration dampening, but the cruise control is just brilliant. I mean, it's expensive, don't get me wrong, but it's a great feature. I added heated grips for cold mornings. It's really good. These bark busters are good for scrub and good for protecting your levers, but not a lot of protection on for your hands against wind blast. So yeah, the grips make a big difference for those cold mornings at the high speed. Don't need it when you're in the slow stuff, because you just don't get the wind blast. That's it really. You know, the AXP skid plate is good, really strong. I smacked it on a few things. You know, you can see the bark busters have had some drops and plenty of scratches. The bike crashes well. Believe me, I've crashed the shit out of it, and it crashes really well. It's just a well built bike. The tank, I don't use the extra range tank unless you plan to do really long trips. You really don't need it, but it has been good on the big trips that I've done. Most of the time I just fill up the rear tank, 250 kilometers easy, 350 kilometers easy, out of the combined tanks. If you stay under 100 kilometers an hour and you're not riding through sand, you'll get over 400 no problem. So that's worth considering if you're going to spend the expense. What else? Mechanically, the bike has been fantastic, no issues, very easy to do valve clearance checks. Just take the tank off, or what would be the airbox. Pretty easy to get to, and quite easy to get to the covers to check the shims. So that's really easy, and even if you need to replace them, you can do that yourself, no problem. As far as issues, there've been a couple, not deal breakers, mechanically none, absolutely rock solid. I did have a side stand switch failure. It had been dicky from day one. Basically, you've got a magnet on the side stand, and when you close it up, it closes a magnetic contact with a sensor, and that failed. That could sometimes get a bit dodgy, and I'd just have to adjust it. But it just completely failed. And when that stops, the bike stops. There's no hot wiring, there's no nothing. It's in the computer. You can get a dongle, which is what I bought, plugged it in, and took the switch out of the circuit, and problem solved. You can, even if you buy the dongle, stick it in your kit of tools, and just keep it. If you have a failure, just plug it in to bypass. If you want to keep the side stand switch, that's what it's technically what it's meant to be used for. But you can just leave it in place, and that's fine. So that was an issue. Replaced the battery, but that's just a consumable. The only other thing was my traction control and ABS. I had some issue. Basically, I lost the speedo and the odometer on the display, and I couldn't figure out what the issue was. Eventually, I tracked it back to the rear ABS sensor, but it wasn't the sensor, because the cable, everything was fine. What it actually was, because if I took the ABS sensor out of the circuit and just put a couple of washers in to move that sensor out slightly, what it does is it disengages the ABS, disengages the traction control, but then my speedo and odometer would come back to life. Strange. I mean, the rest of the display was fine. So I'd got in touch with KTM. The dealer was not really helpful. Got in touch with KTM, and they said, look, let's replace this ABS switch. And actually is the switch from the 2021 model. Anyway, they replaced it. It was out of warranty, but they replaced it at their cost. And lo and behold, everything came back to normal, and I've had no issues since. So a weird little thing. I'm sure they know about it, because the service manager at KTM Australia, he kind of made the suggestion straight away. So it must be something they've had before. But I've had no issues since, and they were really, really responsive and good. The dealer, not so much, but KTM were very good. Anyway, that was it. Apart from that, the rest of it's fine. The steering damper is, a nice to have. On the highway sections, you just make it a bit stiffer, and it takes some of the oscillation out at high speed. Again, just relieves a bit of fatigue. In the bush, I soften it right back to make the steering quicker and easier. On the road, I just give it a little bit more damping. What else? That's pretty much it. Not too much else to tell you about the bike in terms of mods or anything along those lines. So yeah, she's been a great bike. Oh, the only other thing was the exhaust. I went with the Dominator, just a cheapy exhaust out of Europe. Look, it's fine. I ended up taking the baffle out and drilling some holes in, and actually putting a cap over the end of the baffle to try and quieten it down a bit more. The original exhaust gets very hot, and it's very heavy. This is less than half the weight. and it runs a lot cooler without the restriction of the catalytic converter. But yeah, you know, noise-wise, I'd prefer it to be more quiet, but otherwise, it's been pretty serviceable for a couple of $100. So yeah, just a good add-on, but you know, not anything that's given any power or anything like that. Not that the bike needs it. Anyway, that's it. If you've been looking at one of these bikes, the other thing I did do is the seat. I had I modified the original seat and put it back to original because I bought myself a seat concept seat, which is great, but it does make the bike a bit taller. I bought the tall one, which was a bit of a mistake. Should have gone for just the lower one with the wider seat, more comfy seat. Reason being, the taller one, more padding, fantastic on the highway, but it's just you lose connection with the bike when you're riding in the trails, and I just prefer to be a little bit more have a little bit more feel, trail feel, and the comfort seat doesn't really do that. So I went back to the original seat for these sorts of riding, and I just switch between the two depending if I'm doing a long road ride or not. And you know, this thing's pretty wide, which is saving grace, but it's not particularly comfortable. You know, if you're doing an hour's stint, you're feeling it. But in the bush, you're up in time, so it's no problem once you're out riding off-road. And that's about it. All right, let's get back to the riding.